Yeah, and this is a question we ask every guest on our podcast, because whether they're a doctor or an advocate or whoever's on the podcast, they're all dealing with a lot right now. And it's something that has been, I don't want to say surprising, but almost all of them talk about being in therapy, which I think is a wonderful thing to share. They've all talked about the role of therapy in their own mental health. And they also all talk about sort of something I said, which is, take time for yourself, self-care, do things you enjoy. I read an article recently that said, as a cancer patient, how do you pamper yourself? I said, pamper myself? That's not pampering. That's self-care. That's part of your treatment. That's part of staying healthy. Mm-hmm. Is wrapping up those things that bring you joy, that make you feel better, whether it's a creative outlet or journaling or being in nature. We call camping part of my treatment plan, right? Yep. Being in nature is an essential part of my treatment plan. And so I was so struck when I read that article and they called it pampering. I'm like, it's not pampering.
Yeah, that shift needs that shift in paradigm still needs to happen. That it isn't pampering. It's not a hot bath. No, it's more than that.
How you make your joints feel better.
Right. Exactly. But let me just say, Victoria, I'm very thankful and Anne as well that you were putting together this discourse about therapy and medicine and antidepressants, because on Mindbloom, I'm very candid about it. And I, as someone who wants to break down the stigmas as much as possible, I am an advocate for therapy, for psychiatry, for antidepressants, or whatever it is that helps you live the life you deserve, I guess. And I totally comprehend the feeling of beigeness you're talking about. I have been as well on meds for over 5 years. But look, at this point, I'm not still in a place where I would think, no, I want to feel all the feelings. No, I'm not. I'm still, yeah.
Me too. I'm talking the talk, but I'm certainly not going to walk any walk at this point.
No, and it's great to acknowledge and to speak up. Speak up. How many people have you met in your lives who say openly that they're on meds or they see a psychiatrist, right?
Absolutely.
And I come from a country that's very traditional, very Catholic, and people, psychiatrists are for crazy people. And I'll hide this. This is a secret. No one really knows.
I come from a country where they say therapists. Yeah. What, you have your friends. Those are your therapists. You don't need to pay somebody to listen to you.
Yeah, but your friends aren't very objective, probably.
Absolutely not. It's not at all the same thing. Absolutely not.
No, it's not.
You burden your friends, actually. Even setting aside the objectivity of your friends. You don't want to burden your friends all the time.
Absolutely.
It's not fair to them either.
Let me ask you another question. Popped up as you were speaking. We talked about your mental health, and you're taking care of yourselves, and your main obligation is to stay healthy and take care of your health. What about your family and your loved ones and your kids, your husbands? What about their mental health? Do you have anything to say to that? Is this a silly question?
No, not at all.
It's not a silly question at all. Victoria,
not
you
at all.
Kick us off.
So I have 2 sons. They're adults now. One is 25 and the other one is 30. My youngest son is a fashion designer. I always love to put it in anywhere because I'm so proud of what he does.
Yeah.
And in my family, we've had issues with mental health and depression, and the diagnosis brings out the worst. Especially the terminal diagnosis. I think sometimes it's harder on the family than on us because we know exactly what we need to do. They don't. They want to help us, and they don't know how. They don't know what the right thing to say is and what the wrong thing to say is. It's very, very hard to navigate, and often they've forgotten as well, you know? It's all about you and your disease and not their needs. Of course, my younger son would agree with that, but, you know, for the most part, it's true. And it's very, very difficult. And, you know, at Share, we have a support group for caregivers, and I wish more people would join them because it really is difficult. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's we don't have children, and we live far away from our families, so it's an interesting thing because our families, you know, obviously know what's happening with me, and but they weren't here, and they aren't here. Like when I went through chemotherapy, my husband, you know, sort of did everything for me with that. But I think, you know, when it comes to families, it's trying to understand where they are and what they need at a given time. I mean, I know that there are days and weeks where it's just not a topic that we want to talk about because there's nothing to talk about. Okay. Right. So it's putting it appropriately in your relationship, in your life, giving it the time and the bandwidth it needs when it deserves it, when you're having scans or your treatment's not going well or you're physically not well. And then other times, you know, putting it's here and we know it's here, but we're going to, you know, continue and live our life. And, you know, like with my mom, I try not to talk about it too much because there's no point in stressing her out when there's no new news, right? It's status quo, Mom. So we're good, you know, just keep going and trying to help them, you know, understand. And a lot of it's education in my family because again, we didn't have any experience with breast cancer. So just trying to explain to people what it was and what it meant. I mean, we didn't tell anybody except our parents for the first month because we didn't want to answer questions we didn't have answers to. We were so absolutely in shock and not, you know, if you'd asked me then, would I be here today? My answer would be no, I would not, because that's what I thought. And so knowing how much people can handle too, to some degree, and when it's right to talk about things. And that's different for everybody. And for every person who goes through this, the decisions they make about how much to tell their kids, when to tell their kids, how to talk about it. You know, if you're doing well on a treatment, it doesn't have to be front and center. It's another question we ask a lot of our guests with kids and young kids in particular is how, you know, how have you processed this with your kids? How are you talking about it with your kids? And every conversation is different. And it's so unique, but you can take something away from every one of those conversations to think about and to, you know, to build into your own life and your own communication. But it's, you know, families, they have the same stress. And what I would say is, in my experience, they try not to show it to me. So I don't always know what they're thinking and what they're going through because they don't want to put that on me. So sometimes I get surprised. I'll hear a nugget or something will come up and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That's what you're thinking. And so you have to keep that in mind that, I mean, my husband and my family in particular try and protect me from those things, thinking I have enough to worry about myself. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes I wish I knew more about what they were thinking.
Like Anne, you know, I have a problem. I'm an only child. So I always thought that at some point I would take care of my parents. And my parents are still living. But it's changed dramatically after my diagnosis. So I actually worry now about not being here. And that's a very big burden both on me and on my parents. And it's hard. It really is. So you have to strike a balance on how to deal with the elderly because they can't really handle everything, and at the same time they want to. So it's difficult. You got to find a way to keep them abreast, but not frighten them unnecessarily.
Are they here?
But that's the balance, isn't it?
Yeah. My parents are, my parents have an apartment in New York City, but this year they're stuck in Boca Raton, Florida, and they like it there. And actually, in some ways, which is funny, when they lived 2 blocks away from me, I saw them less often than I see them now, because now we have a daily Zoom, so I get to see them every day.
I'm telling you, it's the great equalizer of time and distance.
Yeah.
I know. I see my dad every single day too. It's the same thing.
I wish I did. We don't. There's no technology Zoom going on there. No.
Sometimes I wish that.
No.